Okay, so here we are with the great Fred Abbott in his studio at home. Freddie, what happens in the studio? What goes on here?
Good question. I do a lot of writing down here, so I'm writing. I do a lot of producing down here and mixing, and basically recording pretty much anything apart from kind of live drums and really loud stuff. But I record loads of guitars here, bass, keyboards, vocals, everything else.
Yeah.
And so lots of tracks have been made down here.
So that's mixing and recording for other artists, not just yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Normally I'm doing it for other people. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've been working on a track from your album, which is Shining Under the Soot. So tell us about that track.
Well, this was an album I did make for myself during the pandemic when there was nobody else, no other jobs going, and everything else sort of fell through.
Yeah.
So I recorded this track. This whole album is pretty much me playing all the instruments. So on this track, it's me playing the drums, which I had to do a lot of editing on.
Yeah.
It's me playing all the guitars and keyboards, and then I asked you to play the bass on it, which you very kindly did.
Yep.
During while we were all locked down. And then another friend of mine, Tom Figgins, sang the lead vocal again from home remotely, sent it back to me.
Yeah.
And there's a few other great singers singing the backing vocals on there. But yeah, so it's the title track from the album. It's kind of a soul-y dad rock track, I'd say. Soul dad. Soul dad / yacht.
Okay. Well, that was a question. That was a good question to ask. Okay. So you've got the stems that I sent you, or you've got the files that I've sent you. You've got a DI, you've got an amp recording, and you've got a blend that I've done that I sent you. So
yeah.
So should we audition those and
let's open them up
and see what you think.
I mean, yeah, let's open them up. To be honest, when you do stuff for me, I'll pretty much always just use the bounce that the sort of the blend that you do.
Right.
It's all normally okay. But when other people are doing stuff, you do get the DI and the amp, and the same with myself. If I record it, I'll record the DI and sometimes the amp at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's worth having a look at that. But yeah, I've got the session here, the original session for Shining Under the Soot. So I'm just gonna. So your original bass line is on there.
Yep.
There it is, which I think is just the blend you sent me because it's just one track.
Okay.
So let's mute that. So that will give us the track now with no bass. And now let's import these new files you sent me. So I'm going to import audio in Pro Tools. Find your new folder there, which you sent me on WeTransfer. So there's 3 files, the B15, DI, and the blend. Now, normally you'd just be able to click add there, but it's asking me to convert the files. Let's just see why that is. B15, I can add that one directly to the session, so that's a 24-bit WAV file. So is that, but I've got to convert this one because it's got an illegal character in it. I've never seen that before. So the bass DI track that Silas has sent me here, he's put a / in the file name.
Oh, really?
And Pro Tools are saying that's an illegal character. So
okay, well, that's a tip. Never put a / in your file name for a Pro Tools session.
Yeah,
how bizarre
because it's making me convert that track.
Okay.
Let's see what happens.
Well, just while that's happening, just a note on transferring files if you're working remotely. So when Fred sent me the stems to record to for this project, he made sure to send me full resolution AV files or WAV files, and I made sure that I sent full resolution AV files and WAV files back to him. And it can cause quite a lot of problems if you send compressed audio files like MP3s, MP4s, or anything like that, because what will happen is when those files get compressed, a little bit of audio can get added to the start of that file, and you end up with files that are out of time, a little bit out of time, a bit out of time. And so if you do that multiple times in a session, you end up with just a mess of time in the audio. So make sure that if you are doing this, if you are working remotely, that you are sending stuff in AV files or WAV files.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, never send the MP3s.
Yeah.
So I've imported the 3 new bass tracks into the session here. So before I listen to them, I'm just going to make sure they're in the right position, because when I sent this to you, I started my stems up here on bar 10. That's because this track has quite a long intro, a spoken word intro with some instrumental going on.
Right.
So I don't want Silas to bother listening to that before he starts playing the bass.
Yeah.
I want him to, he just wants to come in from the song.
Yeah. But when you have bounced them, you've bounced them at a bar. Right?
Yeah, a bar line, a bar 10.
Yeah. So that's another point for transferring files. So I made sure when I bounced my files, my audio files, and sent them back to Fred, that I had the same start point that his audio files had. So that means that he can just drag them in, and they're not going to be out of sync with his audio files.
That's absolutely key. Yeah. Another rookie error is when people export things from Logic not as a sort of consolidated file from a same start point, which apparently is very easy to do because it seems to happen the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you just end up with loads of weird little bits of bass audio or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, where the hell do these go in the track?
Yeah, right. Oh, okay. I see.
They haven't stuck it. You need to stick it together.
Yeah, stick it together
and start
and
from the
bounce
same
it.
places. Yeah, the stems you're sent.
So if you go back to if you've come here from watching episode 1, you'll notice that when I talked about bouncing my tracks down, I bounced them down on the master bus, so they're all consolidated into one file that had exactly the same starting point as the audio files that Fred has sent me. So he should be able to just drag them in, and they're going to be in time. At least the audio start points are going to be in time.
Yeah, so I've moved this up to bar 10, which is where your stem started, and I can see straight away that they're now in the right place. The bass is coming in on verse 1.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the first thing I would do, is make sure I've got the bass in the right position before we listen to it. And then we've got 3 tracks here. I'd probably quickly listen to these individually to kind of see what they are.
Yeah.
So with the track, obviously. So well, actually, maybe we'll just solo them just to check they are, what they say they are. That's the bass. That's marked as bass amp. That sounds like a bass amp.
Yeah.
This one marked as DI. That sounds like a DI. Those both sound really clean. And then we've got the one that's marked as Silas's blend. Which sounds pretty good already on its own. So if this was the first time I've been sent these bass files, in a normal working situation, first thing I'd do is probably listen through to the whole track.
So you at that point you'd be auditioning what I actually played, or what the bass player actually sent you.
Yeah. So the first thing I'd be working on is the bass part. And have they played? Obviously, before this has been done, I would have discussed with the bass player what I want out of the part.
Yeah.
In fact, I've normally, if I'm producing a record for somebody, I've normally put a guide bass part on there.
Sure.
On my own bass, very badly played, and you send it to someone else to play the bass better, but you're saying this, this is a rough idea. Do this, but make it better.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'll do is listen to the part. And if they've sent me, sometimes people send me several different takes, so I would comp together what part is that I want.
Yeah.
In this instance, I know that you've basically tried to copy the part that you sent me originally that's on the album.
Yeah.
So we probably don't need to go all the way through.
We don't need to audition the actual part, because these parts have already got the go-ahead.
But I can check that. If we just listen to, the chorus here.
If you're feeling dirty, if you're feeling tired, if this shallow world leaves you feeling uninspired.
It's already the right part. The next thing I would do, once I had the part that this is the notes that I want for the whole thing, is probably go through and look at the timing.
Right.
And try and get it really locked in with the drums, which is something I really like to do.
Yeah.
Because, you can have
So you would edit, even in this style of music, you would you would edit.
I normally end up doing something, yeah, because I feel like you can get away with guitars being loose and with keys being pretty loose, and those kind of lead instruments being a bit out of time. That often makes things quite vibey. But if you can't really get away with the bass being out of time.
No.
If the bass is not in time with the drums, it doesn't matter what else is going on. To me, it's going to sound like a mess.
It's actually it's low frequency energy, isn't it? If you get those two low frequency elements that are not exactly together. So I mean, for instance, the percussion or something like that, if it's high tuned percussion, that can be kind of drifting all over the place. Yeah. But if you've got any low frequency elements, you really hear it when they're clashing and they're not together.
It's very annoying to me, when you hear a bass and a kick drum hit at a different time. Yeah. Particularly if the bass is ahead. If the bass hits before the kick. Yeah. On when you hear it back, it really sticks out to me. Yeah.
So when I'm playing a bass line, if I'm trying to get something to be really tight and feel like it's in the pocket, I'm actually aiming if I can for the back end of the bass drum, so just after the transient. I mean, it's difficult to do, but that's what I'm aiming for. But I don't know if I've hit it every time.
Well, I'd say, looking at what we've done here, let's put the grid on. Because with these drums, because I recorded them myself, and I'm not a very good drummer, I basically have gridded the drums on this track.
So gridded means...
So they're pretty much like not 100% on the grid on Pro Tools, but they're like 85% onto the grid in Pro Tools. And that's because I'm not good enough.
Gridded means basically quantized.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay.
I've edited the drums to be pretty much in time with the click, with the grid on Pro Tools. Yeah. So that makes it quite easy in this circumstance, because all I have to do is zoom in on your bass line, and I can, you can see straight away, because there's the grid right there on the screen, whether the notes are, in time with the grid, and that'll tell me whether they're going to be in time with the drums. Yeah. If you were recording a track without the click, or if you were recording a track even with the click, but you were going for more of a live feel on the drums and you weren't editing them, I would actually move that bass track, up to next to the kick drum. Yeah. And then,
go through every note.
If I was like, this doesn't sound, this doesn't sound.
So
right.
would you actually do it by sight, or would you listen through to it and then correct the bits where you hear the mistakes?
Exactly. Yeah. I probably, if I played it all the way through and it sounded okay, it's just about feel, isn't it? If it felt right, then I probably wouldn't do anything. But if you feel like that, doesn't sound right, or it doesn't sound in the pocket as I want, then you can zoom in and you can see the kick drum and you can see the bass. Oh, you see, the bass is ahead of the kick here, or it's behind, or whatever. Okay. But this is all, exactly where you kind of want it to be. In fact, it's occasionally a little bit, behind the beat, which is what you're saying is kind of your style, is to be, on the back end of the beat. But because I know what this part's going to be, we don't need to listen to it now, but I would listen through the whole track. Yeah. And where things didn't feel right, I would go back and maybe do a few little edits. Okay. Most bass players will do that already before they send it to you. We'll sort of try and send something that's already, what they regard as in time.
What do you mean gridded?
Well, not gridded, but just with whatever the rhythm, something that feels right to them with the rhythm track.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I tend to do is trying to play it over and over until it sounds right to me, and then I'll comp parts together. Okay, yeah. Rather than go. I leave around, because I think, that's a little bit subjective, and I think some producers will want that little bit of looseness, perhaps for a particular track, and some producers won't want that little bit of looseness, and then it's up to them. They can grid it. But if I've already gridded it, they can't do anything. Once you've done it, you can't go back. The feel is gone, right? So I make sure that I don't send stuff that I can hear is off with the click. So it should be pretty much in with the drums, although it hasn't been gridded.
Yeah, and I'm going to assume that this pretty much is.
Don't beat yourself up. Pull yourself together.
that sounds pretty, you know, in the pocket already.
Okay.
You know, that you need to do a lot to that.
Okay.
As far as the timing. And we're listening to Silas's blend right now, and it already pretty much sounds like a record without us doing anything at the moment.
Okay.
I haven't compared it to what the bass sounded like before, but it sounds pretty good just like that.
Okay. Well, why don't we get into the Pro Tools session?
Yeah.
And have a look at how you would go about processing the DI, processing the amp, how you would do a blend of the two, and then how you would set the levels and finish the track off.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, great. All right.
So we decided for this mix, I'm going to use the bounce of the blend that you sent me originally.
Okay.
Because we couldn't tell the difference between that and the blend we just did between the two of them.
Okay.
So let's switch. So here we have in green is the blend you sent me. So what I might do to not confuse myself is just get rid of these other ones off the screen. Let's just hide those. There's your new bass, and there's your old bass, and another shade of green just above it. So we've had a listen to this bass in the mix. Oh, and the computer's crashed already. I wonder why that is. So we've had a listen to that bass in the mix. It already sounds pretty good. Doesn't sound far off from being a record.
Yep.
But you know, I would probably do a few moves on it to sort of get it to work with everything else. Everything else here is pretty much already a finished mix that we're importing this into.
Yep.
So we just need to listen to this in context with the mix and see what we need to do just to, you know, make it pop a tiny bit more, as the kids would say. So the first thing I'm going to do, here it is here, we're just listening to it on 0 dB at the moment with nothing. It's probably open up an EQ. So let's have a listen to it. So even though there's nothing going on up here, I'm probably going to cut off the very high. If there is anything there, it's just going to be scratchy noises and fret noises and buzzes and stuff that I don't want in this track, where I want a really smooth, you know, bass tone. So I'm going to cut that off up there, and then we've set it at 5,000.
Okay.
I mean, I reckon if we listen to that, there's not really going to be anything there. But let's just see what is there. Well, there you go. There's literally nothing until we get down to 3,000. So I could have taken that way back. So let's leave that at 4,000. And then what I want to do is probably add in a bit of more, a slight boost in the high mids there, which will give us a little bit more definition on the notes you're playing.
Just gotta try. Your soul might be dusty, but I know there's gold inside. If you're feeling dirty, if you're feeling tired, if this shallow.
You can instantly hear there, just by adding a tiny bit, we've added like 1 dB of boosting between kind of like 900 and 2K, and we've taken out a little bit of sort of muddiness around kind of 300. The definition on the notes, we can clearly hear what you're playing better. It's got a little less muddy. I would also probably cut out the very, very low information, all the stuff that I can't hear. We do a really sharp cut on that, down to about 20 hertz. I can't hear anything down there, but there is a lot of energy happening there. And then I'm going to look at where the most important information is on the bass, on this bass, where the sort of the low. And we can see it's mostly happening around here. This is kind of the bass. We just solo this. This is kind of the main bass information. So I need to have it in solo. That's the tambourine track. We don't want to solo the tambourine track. Here it is. So if we just narrow that up. So we see that's where most of the information is happening, the bottom, the foundation you know, of the bass. So what I would normally do, what I tend to do, instead of really boosting this, is make a sharp cut in anything else in the other instruments that are going to be in that area, allowing us to kind of hear that through the mix.
Okay.
So in this case, everything else in this mix is basically high pass, well past that point, apart from the drum bus, apart from the drums. So all the piano and the guitars and stuff have all been high passed, way above 120.
Yeah. So there's no information.
So there's nothing else it's going to clash with. It's just going to be the drums. So which is often the case. So I would, at the drum bus, right at the end of the drum bus, we've got this EQ. I would basically make a tiny cut, a little incision, a really sharp incision in there around 120. And if we A-B that.
Crushed. You can find your way out. You just gotta try. Your soul might be dusty, but I know there's gold inside. If you're feeling dirty, if you're feeling tired, if this shallow world leaves you feeling uninspired, just wipe away the debris. Take a
Now, it could just be psychological, but to me, when I don't have that in, the bass goes further away.
Yeah.
And when I put that tiny cut in, the bass,
Yeah.
I can hear the bass.
Its own space.
Yeah, it's got its own space. It
like.
suddenly comes forward in the mix.
Okay.
So it's just creating a little space for the bass to poke through. I've got the very low tune snare drum on this tune, so there's a lot of snare going on down at like 120 as well.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some kick action going on at 120. So I just want to carve a little bit of space for the bottom of the bass to poke through there.
Okay.
Seeing as we don't have a huge amount of high mid kind of action on this bass tone, because we don't want it. We want a smooth, vintage, bass sound that is about bass.
Yep.
So that's probably all the EQ I'm going to do on this. So we've just boosted some high mids, cut a tiny bit of sort of muddiness there, and boosted a tiny bit where most of our information is. And then I probably want to. It's already fairly sort of flat because of the way you played it. It's not sort of bouncing around too much dynamically.
But
I probably want to compress it a tiny bit to help me sort of sit this in the mix when I come to kind of bounce it up. So I don't like to compress, a bass in the box really, really hard. Take off a lot of gain reduction, like 5 or 10 dB gain reduction. If you do that in the box, it tends to sound pretty rubbish.
Yeah.
Really squashed. So I would probably use 1 or 2 or 3 compressors in, one after the other, taking off a tiny bit.
Yeah.
To get the result that I want, but still keep the sort of character and the dynamics of the bass and the live feel of of what you're doing. So let's put one on here. First thing I'd put on is a really old Waves plugin, which is the MV2. So this is an upward and downward compressor. So this is going to pull down some of the peaks, and then this is going to bring up where the information, the lower velocity information.
Yeah.
So if we listen to this back, if I play some bit where you're doing some long notes.
crushed. You can find your way out. You just gotta try. Your soul might be dusty, but I know there's gold inside. If you're feeling dirty, if you're feeling tired, if this shallow world leaves you feeling on.
So what that's doing in that chorus section is it's bringing down the front end of those notes you're playing, those long notes.
Yeah.
And then as the note dies away, it's bringing up the tail of the note.
Yeah.
So it's effectively increasing the sustain of that note. So that note, those long notes don't die away in the mix. They kind of stay present in the mix.
So it's not necessarily, you haven't got it on there so much to even out the dynamics. You've got it to just slightly alter the envelope of the note envelope.
That's exactly what it's doing, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Which has the effect of making the bass track sort of smoother. So, more kind of more controlled.
Okay.
Because the bass isn't. You don't perceive the bass to be dying and coming back in again and back out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I see what you mean.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
You perceive it to be always there.
Yeah.
But we're not taking off that much at all with that. We're only taking off maximum 3 dB. We're not even getting to 3 dB, and we're only adding a little bit as well down the bottom. but that's fine by me.
Yeah.
That already sounds good to me. And then I would add another compressor after that. Maybe something that's going to... Because that didn't really do anything to the sound. That was kind of... didn't add any character to our bass sound. That was pretty neutral. I'm going to add something else that, will maybe have more character to it. So let's try another Old Waves plugin that I really like, the Kramer Pi. So let's turn off this noise. We don't need the analog noise.
Crushed. You can find your way out. You just gotta try. Your soul might be dusty, but I know there's gold inside. If you're feeling dirty, if you're feeling tired, if this shallow world leaves you feeling uninspired, just wipe away the debris. Take a real good look. You're still shining under the sun. Don't beat yourself up.
So we're taking off maximum kind of 3 dB with that compressor.
Okay.
Which that one is altering the sound to me a tiny bit. Obviously, we're listening to it in the context of the mix. We're not soloing it, so it's so it's hard to make out these changes, but it's adding a little bit more poke.
I've noticed that you've hardly soloed this bass at all. It's all been about, it's all been in context, in the mix, all the little changes that you're making.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important. It's taken me a long time to learn that you really have to EQ things in context with what else is in the track. If I just soloed that bass and made it sound the best it could sound in solo, it probably wouldn't work at all on the track.
Yeah.
And that goes for everything. You've got to find the space in the track where each thing sits, and then cut, ideally, cut stuff out of other things in order to make that groove that it can sit in. You can hear it.
I think that's the same thing for the sort of choice of instrument in the first place. If I'd wanted a sound that sounded really pretty, I would have picked a different bass. Yeah. Because that bass sounds old on its own, but I know it's going to work in the track. So I did exactly the same thing. I auditioned the bass sound from the start in the track, rather than picking a pretty sounding bass. It's going to sound great in solo mode. I picked a slightly ugly sounding bass. It's going to sound great in the mix.
Yeah, it's doing the job that this track needs.
Yeah.
It's sort of taking up exactly the right space. I mean, already now when we play this back.
Crushed. You can find your way out. You just gotta try.
We've got the bass pretty loud at the moment.
Yeah.
Even with it too loud, it's not getting in the way of the vocals at all. Nowhere near the vocals. It's not getting in the way of the guitars. I can hear it. Sort of. I can hear it. And I can also hear all the drums fine. It's kind of has its own space where it's not clashing with anything else.
Okay.
Which is why you want to why you EQ it in context.
Yeah.
Not that we've done a huge amount of EQ anyway here, because it was already kind of working. So now all I think we need to do is pull this bass track down to the right kind of level.
Yeah.
Because we've been listening to it fairly loud, and see how it sits in the track. If we need to do anything else.
Crushed. You can find your way out. You just gotta try. Your soul might be dusty, but I know there's gold inside. If you're feeling dirty, if you're feeling tired, if this shallow world leaves you feeling uninspired, just wipe away the day.
So that sounds pretty good to me. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good to me.
Let's hear the section where you really are going for it, which is up here in the mid-8.
Yeah. You want to hear that this is not going to get in the way of the vocal.
Yeah, because this is the section where you did the most playing.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably the section where you dug in hardest as well.
Maybe.
So I've noticed that it goes a bit louder there on some bits, but we want to keep that because we want to give the impression that something's happening in this section, and this because there's actually more guitar. Everything else gets louder in this section, so it makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
That the bass, if you were playing it live, you would go harder here.
Yeah.
More stuff would come in, and the drums would be going harder. So let's just hear this bit to make sure you're not getting too in the way.
Look, you're still shining under the sun. Don't beat yourself up. Pull yourself together.
I've just pulled it down a tiny bit there because it was catching our attention.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty good. Let's hear it in the outro.
You're so shiny. Oh, yes, you are. You're so shiny.
That sounds pretty good to me.
All right.
That's doing the job that I wanted it to do. It's not getting in the way of anything else, and it's sounds really good to me.
All right. Great. Well, thanks for doing that, Freddie. And
Pleasure.
we'll leave all Fred's links and contacts, whatever we can,
Thank you
in
very
the
much.
description if you're looking for somebody to produce your record. Freddie's ready and willing. So that's it, I think. Thanks for that, Freddie.
Thanks for having me, Sally.
All right.
Still shine.